And that is, if there's a God, if God created the universe, what is He like? What is God like? Um, and before this story, it says, now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathered around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Like, what is Jesus doing hanging out with, like, all these really messed up people? So, you think about the people in your school that most people would look at as, like, bad kids. Like, think about, like, who is the worst of the worst kids in your school that people look down on, maybe. Jesus was hanging out with those types of people, and these like religious leaders were like, why is he, if he's this religious leader, why is Jesus hanging out with these people? Why would he hang out with those people? And Jesus responds by sharing this story. He says, there was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate or my inheritance." So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had and set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. Okay, so what's going on in this story is there's a dad, and the son comes to his dad. The dad had two sons. One of the sons comes to his dad, and he says, "Can you give me my inheritance now?" That's like a really, really insulting thing. Can you imagine going to your parents? This is like, and saying this to them, like it's like saying, "I wish you were dead so that I could have all your stuff. So can you just go, like, instead of me waiting for you to die, can you just like give me my inheritance now?" And the dad like went ahead and did that and gave this kid's like inheritance to him. And what did the kid do? He took that inheritance and it says he went off to a distant country. It's like not only did he take from his dad, but then he left his dad and went as far away from his dad as he could. And it said, what did he do with his inheritance? It says he spent it on wild living. Okay? Now, I don't know exactly what he was doing while living, but you can imagine, like, okay, what this guy was spending all of his money on. He squandered it away. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his field to feed the pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. So this guy, he spends all his money, and then all of a sudden in that country there's like a severe famine, there's no food, and he has to work for somebody. And it says he was feeding the pigs, and he was jealous of what the pigs had to eat because he didn't have anything to eat. Now think about that. Think about going from like living with a very generous father to like wandering away. All of a sudden he thought he was like on the mountaintop, and now all of a sudden he's at the absolute low. I mean, pigs, in many cultures, people look at pigs as like the most filthy animal that is possible, right? And now this guy is jealous of the pigs. That's crazy. So he's starving. He's desperate. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired men have food to spare? And here I'm starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men.' So he got up and he went to his father." Okay? So it says he came to his senses. He said, I've got to go back to my father and I've got to beg for forgiveness. And maybe, just maybe, my father will have enough mercy and grace to let me be like one of his hired people to work for him. Maybe he will have enough forgiveness to allow me to be like one of his workers. So he got up and he went back to his father. Okay? But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now is found. So they began to celebrate. So how would you expect the father to respond to the son who came back desperate and begging? I would expect the father to be like kind of disappointed, right? Ashamed. And yet, it says, while this son was still a long way off, the father saw him. It was almost as if the father was waiting at his door, like looking into the horizon, waiting for his son to come over the hill. Like his father wanted his son to come home so badly that when he saw him at a distance, the father ran to him. Okay? The father ran to him and threw his arms around him, and then he told all of his servants, he's like, Get a robe and put it on, put sandals on his feet, kill the fattened calf. Let's throw a huge party. Okay? For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now he's found. So they began to celebrate. Okay, so what was my question at the beginning? You guys remember? If there's a God, what is he like? What is he like? Jesus shares this story saying, let me tell you what God is like. Let me tell you about my heart. For those people that you think are too lost for me, okay? This is like a really extravagant, crazy example that Jesus gives of this is my heart for lost people, okay? And you guys, I don't know about you, but I can put myself in this guy's shoes. Like, have you ever felt like this guy? Like, have you ever felt like, how could God love me from what all that I've done? Have you ever felt ashamed to like go back to God? Have you ever felt ashamed to like go back to your parents? Have you ever felt as like desperate as this guy? And Jesus says, this is how much I love you. That while you, the Bible says, while you were sinners, Christ died for you. His love is so much for you that he actually died on the cross for you. And that the Father came and ran to him. And so, what is it? So my second question is, what does it look like to follow God? What does it look like to follow Jesus? Most people think, if I were to follow God, they have this picture, most of us in the world, probably some of you in this room, think, if I were to decide to follow God, I need to pull myself up and get my life together, and I just need to try hard to be really good. Almost like God, we almost picture it as if like God is up in heaven, and there's some kind of ladder that we have to climb. And if we get high enough on the ladder, then God will look at us and do this. You're good. Good job. Okay, you're good enough. You're not perfect.